So it seems that launch day is officially confirmed. Leviathan is going to be pre-ordered on the 10th of June and then go on full sale on the 24th. Let's talk through the box contents, prices, pre-orders and way to buy it, plus a few fun extras that apparently you get for buying one. Hello and welcome back to Warsbets Tactics, where it seems that 10th edition Warhammer 40k really isn't so very long away now. The Leviathan launch date that was long suspected is official. We are indeed getting a 10th of June pre-order and a 24th of June release. That's been a bit of an open secret for really quite a long time now, and was kind of all but confirmed this week, as there just wasn't really any other timescale that made sense. They usually do a 2-week pre-order for their big edition changing things. I understand mainly to do with the logistics of shipping them out more than anything else. And as they confirmed it was a June release, that was basically the only time that they could do. In this handy graphic, Games Workshop have put up the times where you can pre-order it around the world. Probably going to be a busy time on the Games Workshop web store, I'm sure. Looks like it's going to be 10 AM in most places, 11 AM in Japan and Europe local time. Unlike with quite a lot of their more minor releases recently, they are indeed implementing a web store queuing system this time round. Again, something that seems to manifest in their edition changes for things like Kill Team or the Horus Heresy one. So hopefully this release should have a bit more defense against things like bots and scalping, and there should be a fair bit less chance of Games Workshop servers getting overloaded on launch day and the web store going down for extended periods. They also say that this queuing system will limit orders. I suspect that people are only going to be able to buy either 1 or 2 copies. They didn't confirm it here. I'd guess they'll confirm it when it actually goes live on their store. In the article they did talk about the numbers that might be available. I feel like a lot of people are just apprehensive that they're going to sell out far too quickly and leave loads of people disappointed again. And I'm kind of interested to see which way this goes this time round. It certainly happens with Indomitus, but I feel like Games Workshop really wants to produce enough of this to meet demand, and have confirmed they've made far more of this than Indomitus, and they also say that it's a mind-boggling quantity on this article. I really hope that we don't get left in a situation where people are lacking without one. That'll be a massive own goal on Games Workshop's part. This one isn't just some random box release. This one's a really big deal where they can cash into the absolute max, so I really hope that they haven't underproduced. Maybe just a little bit worryingly, they do say that the box will be strictly while stocks last. We already knew that this was a limited run order. It's not going to be the starter set for 10th edition, that's going to be some other boxes coming later, similar to 9th. But I feel like doubling down on saying it's very strictly while stocks last might mean that there's no made to order coming this time round, as they did with the Indomitus box. I guess it's still not 100% confirmed, they could always change their mind if they really wanted to. I feel like that's almost certainly not going to be their plan though, and unless they do underproduce by absolutely crazy levels, then I feel like maybe it's a little bit less likely to happen due to this statement. Pricing wise, it still won't be officially confirmed until they put it up for pre-order on the 10th, but again this one's been a bit of an open secret for a while now. It's going to be £150, €200, somewhere around the $245 to $250 mark, and 420 Australian dollars. It's definitely a massive box and even pricier than their Battle Force sets, though I'd say to be fair to them, there's even more stuff in it than a regular Battle Force set. We'll go through the contents in just a second and talk about whether or not I think it's a good deal. It also looks like you might even get another little freebie thrown in depending on where you order it from. One of the new things that the article said that there were a bunch of fun little extras, maybe not worth a whole load, but kind of interesting for some maybe. Finally, for the pre-order, for other things like index cards, we don't have any clarification for other stuff coming yet. I think there's at least a reasonable chance though that they might announce things like the individual sale of a rulebook or the index data cards. They might well be coming on Sunday the 17th, plus maybe more individual copies of that mission deck. They're definitely going to be releasing around the same sort of time. I guess they wouldn't necessarily need a 2-week pre-order for those ones, so I'd guess that we might have more stuff announced going up for pre-order next Sunday. I guess really quite a lot of the essentials to play Warhammer 40k 10th edition do look like they're going to be free online, and it sounds like they're going to be uploading those sometime before the 24th. Looking forward to talking some indexes and data cards, and I'm really looking forward to that points document coming out. It's kind of hard to put stuff in context without knowing the points at the moment. By this point the box contents are pretty well known. Here's the big set of models in the box, one of the biggest that Games Workshop's produced in a very long time. 72 models here, and it's not like they're just all Horde models as well. There's a big vehicle and 2 monsters here, plus some other pretty big interesting miniatures. For the Space Marines, we've got 4 characters, the Terminator Captain and Librarian, the Lieutenant and the Gravis Apothecary, 5 Terminators with their pet Teleport Homer, 5 of the new Primaris Stern Guard veterans, and 10 of the Infernus Marines with their Pyreblasters. There's also a big Stompy Ballistas Dreadnought as well with the las cannons and missiles. I'm looking forward to painting up a bunch of these guys in red. I think the Terminators are the miniatures that I'm most looking forward to getting my hands on. So overall I think it's quite a big fun set of Space Marine reinforcements. Will be cool to try all of them out in game. Out of the two forces though, I'd say that maybe the Tyranids have got the slightly better value in terms of sheer miniatures in the box. Two middling sized monstrous creatures in the Screamer Killer and the Psychophage, a fairly hefty amount of swarms with 20 Termagants, 11 Eurogaunts and 2 Rippers, a little bit of Barbgaunt fire support with 5 of those, 3 of the mini Lictor von Ryan's Leapers, the Winged Prime with its talons, and that rather cool looking Euro Tyrant, and its 2 little bonus brain Euroloids. I think it's pretty awesome to have a couple of resculpted classics, but so many cool new miniatures added to the Tyranid range as well. Overall, just in terms of model value and what Games Workshop would sell these separately for, I feel like the Tyranid's Force maybe has just a little bit more raw value in the box than the Space Marines, though both are very good deals compared with what they'd sell them for separately. Then, as well as the models, there's also the supporting bit, the Leviathan Launch Book with the core rules, Combat Patrol and Crusade, plus that bonus Tyrannic War supplement, that chapter-approved mission deck for playing new games of 40k, a great big transfer sheet, and a starter book with all the data sheets and things in. The cards in the big Leviathan book I think are pretty valuable in their own right. I guess the core rules will be free to download, but it definitely doesn't hurt to have a copy of them, plus the mission deck's going to be kind of necessary for playing games. If you ask me whether or not the Leviathan box is a good deal, I'd say pretty much objectively from Games Workshop it is. Obviously you can have the debate as to whether or not Warhammer in general is pretty expensive as a hobby. Most people would generally say yes somewhat, but as far as new shiny plastic miniatures produced by Games Workshop go, this is about as good a deal as they ever do. Perhaps the major negatives are that the box does have a high entry point at the £150 or $250 odd. It's not exactly loose change that. The models are monopose, so for people who really like the flexibility, it might have a little bit less value compared with buying some of the kits separately, though I suspect that you'd save a lot compared with doing so. And obviously in general, anything's only a good deal if you actually really want the contents. If you can't either resell or split the Space Marines for example, and all you want were the Tyranids, that might lessen the value of the box in real terms. However though, all that being said, if you added up the cost of how much I'd expect Games Workshop to sell these miniatures for individually, plus add in the Leviathan book and the mission deck, I expect they'd be looking around somewhere in the region of around £600, €800 or $1,000. Obviously far more than Games Workshop is asking for the box, it would seem. Just in terms of theoretical discount land, that's around about 75% off typical prices. Pretty much unheard of good from Games Workshop. I think that's even better than Indomitus by a little bit. I feel like Games Workshop really want to push this thing, at least compared with other things that they sell. In general, the miniature sculpts seem to have gone down pretty well with most people. Things like the Neurotyrant, the Screamer Killer, and the Terminators seem to be big favourites, and you've basically got a box that a whole load of people want. I guess that brings us to the question of the best ways to try and pick one of these up, and here perhaps are 4 of the better options to try and get your hands on the miniatures. First up, I'd say that Games Workshop's web store is likely to be the single biggest supplier of these. They generally tend to reserve the lion's share of copies for their store to sell. It should have the queuing system, so I think there's a pretty reasonable chance that a lot of people do get these, provided they haven't underproduced horrifically. Hopefully the queuing system and the limitations on the number that you can buy will limit the amount of orders people pick up, and the majority of people who actually manage to order them might get some. You would be paying a bit more compared with getting them through a third-party local gaming store, but it does look like Games Workshop offers a few extras as well, which we'll go through just after this. Otherwise, perhaps the cheapest place to get hold of the box itself will be third-party local gaming stores, independent Warhammer stockists like Element Games in the UK. Lots and lots of others exist across the world, often tending to deliver Warhammer things for a discount of around about 10 to 20%. If you do manage to land Leviathan at a discount compared with Games Workshop's prices, that's only going to add to the better value of the deal of the models in the box. And just anecdotally, it does sound like a fair few of these do have at least decent amount of these boxes coming in. Far better than some recent store allocations. With some things like that Lionel Johnson model or the recent Kill Team boxes, there's been almost none on offer to them. As a better deal though, these guys are often going to sell out faster. They might not have the infrastructure to do any sort of queuing system. A lot of them might just put all their stuff up on their web store on the Saturday, though a few might also do a bit of a reservation type system where people get in touch to try and make sure they can guarantee a copy. There's a couple of examples of those links down in the video description, such as Element Games in the UK or Gap Games in Australia. Both of those will definitely be getting a decent amount of Leviathan copies, though obviously are popular stores. Definitely worth checking out, though there are plenty of other options available. Interestingly, there's also some extra freebies thrown in for the independent stores as well. Again, we'll go through them in just a second. Otherwise, there's also Games Workshop's brick and mortar stores as well, the actual Warhammer shops that you can go into, and Games Workshop definitely will ship a whole load of these for you to physically go in buy in person on the 24th. For a whole load of people, this will genuinely be somewhat convenient. For a lot of people, you might be hours and hours drive away from your nearest Warhammer store, if they're even reachable at all. Kind of irrelevant for a lot of the world, really quite useful for some, particularly if you're in big cities. I really wouldn't underestimate this as a fallback option if Leviathan does wind up selling out super quickly. Last time when Indomitors sold out in a stupidly short amount of time, Games Workshop did confirm that they had tens of thousands of boxes going onto their brick and mortar stores, and I think that these ones are far less likely to get scalped, as scalpers don't tend to waste time going around and walking from place to place. I guess it's another pretty reasonable practical system of rationing, and should the box sell out super quickly, then this is a pretty nice fallback I think for plenty of people. Local gaming stores might also have a few in-store copies as well, some might have some available to buy on the 24th. Finally, there's also the option of individual hobbyists selling part of the boxes. I certainly wouldn't recommend going to eBay and paying scalper prices for a big FOMO box. Hopefully they make a decent amount and that's just not a thing. But even if it is, there will be a whole load of real hobbyists selling off miniatures that they don't want from the box at pretty reasonable prices due to there being loads and loads of them coming onto the market. If you're a Tyranid player, you might well pick up 2 copies of the box, sell off the Space Marines and maybe a duplicate miniature that you don't want, say if you didn't want 2 of those winged primes. I think this is definitely worth a look if you're only really interested in a few units of the box, or even interested on doubling up on just one model that you think is really cool. I suspect you could land yourself a phalanx of ballistas dreadnoughts if you wanted. Just pick up that Tyranid hunting lieutenant if you thought he looked cool, or add a psychophage to devour some enemy psychers. Could be a very reasonable option if you don't want to shell out for the entire box and you're not really that bothered by the supporting gumph. Plus you could tailor things just to your faction, be it Space Marines or Tyranids. Finally, also on Games Workshop's announcement article, it looks like there's a few random freebies and extras thrown in with the various different ways that you can buy the box. From the Games Workshop web store, apparently you get a set of 2 double-sided gaming boards with a total playable area of 30 by 44 inches. I think that's be enough to play a combat patrol game on. Not really a whole load more than a bit of snazzy paper, but it can make your battlefield look a little bit better if you're just playing on a kitchen table or something. I have seen these in use. If you actually go to a Warhammer shop, one of the brick and mortar stores, then you get these apparently. A set of 36 acrylic tokens, which includes 6 40mm objectives, 10 battleshock tokens and 20 wound tokens, and a tin sporting the Leviathan logo to carry them round in. Again, I guess these seem usable enough. Objective markers are definitely handy to have, though I think I personally prefer those neoprene ones that quite a lot of third-party people make, where they have the actual radius of the objective as well as just the central point. I guess Battle Shock is going to be something that you're going to need to mark quite a bit. Having some tokens for that seems reasonable. I don't think I realistically use those wound tokens for their intended purpose, to be honest. It just seems far easier to put a dice by the model in my opinion. Objective and Battle Shock tokens though do look handy. Finally, if you manage to land one of them through an independent stockist with the discount, you then apparently get the choice of either a set of double-sided deployment zone markers or a Warhammer 40k branded neoprene dice tray, one of those soft ones that can be a bit of a catching surface for rolling dice on a busy board, though just from a look at this I do wonder if it might be a little bit on the small side, kind of hard to tell without any dice to scale. The dice tray does look like kind of a nice thing though. I think the deployment zone markers are okay maybe. Looks like the idea is to put those at the edges of your deployment zone and then they can just be a bit of a guide to where you set up your miniatures. Again, realistically, like the moon markers, I feel like they might well be overkill. I'd probably just be a little bit more tempted to mark things out with dice quickly. No idea if they're going to be realised through web store orders for these independent stockists or not, or if it's just an in-store thing. I imagine it might vary a bit place to place depending on how much supply Games Workshop sends them. If it were me, I probably wouldn't let that sway the way that you're trying to pick up the box set from. I'd actually say that maybe the objectives and Battleshock tokens look like the single most useful out of any of these, so that would mean going into the actual Warhammer shop and not bothering with ordering on the web store or anything, which maybe just seems a little bit leaving it later. Let me know what you make of all of this though. What would be the places that you'd be most tempted to pick up the Leviathan box when it comes out? In any case, really looking forward to the new edition of Warhammer 40k. Glad to see that it's finally on the horizon and confirmed now. I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to painting up some nice new models and playing some games. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to keep up with any more news and rumours of Warhammer 40k's releases. I do tend to post new videos just about every day, and I feel like Games Workshop's going to be keeping the torrent of updates coming over the next few weeks. Finally, if you've been enjoying all the news and updates on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description below. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.